Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Yalla Salesforce. We will continue our journey with Yalla Salesforce Trail Mix. Over the last couple sessions, we mastered the flows. We had a lot of great sessions talking about different types of flows, different use cases, understanding the different types, stream flows, auto launch flow, record trigger flows. And then we took it to the next level, elevating the screen flow to the next level, building reactive screen. When I change something, something else is going to change, and so on. And then we move to the advanced level of flows by going through the trail for distribute and implement flows. Understand more how can we distribute the screen flow within the lightning page, put it in an action button, put it into the utility bar, and even taking it outside Salesforce by putting it into Experience Cloud. Then we said we built enough flows. It's the time for taking our experience to the next level, start applying the best practices. And it's not just about delivery, it's about delivering high quality flow, keeping in mind the governor limits and all the great things that we learned together in here, from creating testing, doing unit testing, regression testing, and finally, as we mentioned, the governor limits. Then we started last time flow implementation 2, where we started to understand the different permissions and user context, system context with sharing and without sharing. And after that, we understood the debugging and handling the flow and error handling in general and the full stack. Today, we're going to start a new chapter, which is the rollback after an error. What rollback means? Rollback is part of the transaction committed. So part of the flow implementation, we agreed that we have something called transaction. So let me duplicate that tab and let me jump to the flow implementation one with the transaction picture. Here we go. We have a flow start from the beginning to the very end, and all of that is happening in a transaction. And we learned as well that we might have like a flow, and then we have a subflow, and all of that is happening in transaction. So what rollback still means, this is bringing us to another topic called order of execution. Order of execution in Salesforce, like developers already like very well familiar with this order of execution. And that's why the purpose of implementation 1 and implementation 2, on the top of understanding the best practice, it's all about bridging the gap between the administrator skill set and the developer skill set. And this is one of the most important concepts that you need to be familiar with, the transaction and how the life cycle of the record and so on. So here we go. This is the order of execution. You will find that we have a critical point saying this is save the record to the database. And then we have another critical point, which is this is the commit to the database. What we even mean by that? Let me open an account, and I'll just open randomly an account. And I will say those are the details. You came in here and you decided to change the rating from hot to warm. Then you hit save. This order of execution telling us that even if I click the save, there is a life cycle for this to happen. There are things gonna happen before this save to the database, and there are things that are gonna happen after we save this change to the database, and all of that is still temporary until we reach to the point saying everything happened successfully. It's the time to commit it to the database. Means that this change gonna stick in the database. So if any of those steps fail, that means this will not commit to the database. So far so good. So this is the difference between, you will hear before save activities, and we have after save activities, and then we have the committing to the database, and finally we have even post commit logic, which is like sending an email and so on. So far so good. All right, so the rollback is, we are saying if something failed, do you need to still continue with the committing to the database, or do you want to say, oops, I change my mind, I'm gonna roll back the whole transaction. So I don't want to have data inconsistency. I want to make sure the entire transaction either it's successfully, so I want to commit, or something wrong happened. Accordingly, whatever even saved, I want to roll it back because I want to make sure the data integrity is perfect. This is the whole idea behind the rollback. Accordingly, when I come in here, save. If I have a validation rule gonna go in here. System validation and custom. It doesn't make sense to save the record to the database and then find out that we are violating one of the existing custom validation rules that we built to stop this from happening. So I might say, if the account number is blank, do not allow this change to happen. So rather than changing from hot to warm and then find out and then we need to change our mind back, if the account number is blank, do not do it in the first place. Accordingly, this gonna violate this validation rule. Accordingly, it will not be saved. Accordingly, will not even reach to the point that is commit. How about I have an automation that is running, and part of that, it's like it's changing something, and then I am updating another related record, and all of that happening within the transaction, and then this is violated. Do you need to, whatever account change, keep it, but the violation for the task creation, do you need to roll back the account change, or do you want to keep it? We'll understand more, but the whole idea is rollback. That means preventing the committing for the transaction to the database. So far, so good? All right. So this is just a high level. So let's dig into it. The problem with full path. Flows have an important built-in feature that protect your data if flows run in is only partially successful. This is what we are saying. I have a flow, and I want to say set account to active and then create an onboarding case. So if I'm activating an account, I want to make sure that someone gonna take care of that account and do an onboarding process. I might be successfully doing the account to active, and while I'm trying to create that case, something wrong happened. That a validation rule that we faced, which will block creating that case. What's going to happen with this account we just set it to active? Do you need to roll it back, or you don't need to roll it back? You want to keep it. So by default, if we don't have any fault path, Salesforce by default gonna roll back this set account to active. So either both gonna be successfully executed or nothing gonna happen. And this is what happens by default in here. So this is to prevent us from partially successful. Rolling back a transaction, this feature reverse every database change made in that transaction, returning the data into its previous state before the transaction is committed to the database. So if this failed, this is gonna fail. Done. Let's look at an example, how rolling back works and how important it can be. Imagine a flow with two elements. As we mentioned, we want to activate, and then we will have an onboarding process after. If the flow fails on the second element, Salesforce roll back the first element account update. Although the account update before it finished successfully, and it's finished before even encountering an error. But Salesforce by default, preventing this partial successful, so it's part of the same transaction. So Salesforce reverse the account update too. Right? So far, so good? Love it. If the transaction were not rolled back, the account update would still happen, even though case creation failed. So if there is no rollback happening by default, account already made it to the database, but the case is the one which failed. But it's important when partial flow completion could cause problems of your organization, because no one gonna follow up on that. It's already the account is active, no case got created, no one will be aware. So this will create like a business process failure. It can be creating data integrity problems and so on. However, if a flow error sends down to a fault path, the transaction is not rolled back. So we have two behaviors we want to highlight in here. If I don't have any fault path, by default, Salesforce or rollback. So if this fails, both elements are rolled back. However, the behavior is different whenever I have a fault path. So if I have a fault path and this failed, this is already saved to the database and they continue and we're gonna commit. However, this one will not be created. So now, because there is a fault path, nothing is rolled back. So this is gonna fail, but this will be succeed. So if we had a fault path to create onboarding case element, the account updates still happen even if the case creation failed. So far, so good. So it's just different behavior. No fault path, rollback gonna happen. Fault path, rollback will not happen. Here will happen. All right. Record trigger flow have an additional peril to consider. If an error occur with no fault path, so we were here talking about auto launch flow. How about the record trigger flow? Same thing. So Salesforce display an error message blocking the change that triggered that flow. What I mean by that, if I am changing it in here from hot to warm, and something happened within the transaction, like I tried to create the case and failed, even this change, which even triggered the record trigger to run, will not be executed. So, and it will give you unhandled issue for sure because you didn't have any full path. So record trigger flow have an additional peril to consider. If an error occurs with no full path, Salesforce display an error message blocking the change that trigger. However, if an error sends flow down a full path, Salesforce complete the change that trigger. So it's exactly the same behavior, but it's not just about the actions within the elements within the flow that will be rolled back. It's even the record that triggered that record trigger flow will not be executed and it will not be saved. Right? Thankfully, Flow Builder has two elements that can force a flow to roll back a transaction. So how can the point here, if I have a fault path and the rollback will not happen, how can we enforce it to happen? And now we have the rollback records. All right, so in the screen flow, the rollback records element, this is the element we will be learning about, and this is what will force it to roll back. In the record trigger flow, we have another element called the custom error, which can be used in order to force it again to roll back. So far, so good? Lovely. All right. So these elements only work with their respective flow types. So I will not be able to see a custom error within the screen flow and so on. If a flow uses a different flow type, there is no way to roll back that flow's transactional fault path. When working with a flow that's not a screen or record trigger flow, evaluate each element to determine whether fault path are right for that element in that flow. You might not want to risk partial completion. So be careful with whatever type you are dealing with and whatever components and whether you need to roll back or to not roll back. But at least we understand now, fault path, there is no rollback, no fault path, rollback will be happening. All right. Add a rollback record elements to screen flow. All right. Look at the guided opportunity create flow. So let's go for it. All right. So I'll go back in here, setup, and I'll go for the flow. And let's see that flow. Here we go. If you remember last time, we got the opportunity details in here. And after that, hot account is happening. So this is an update record. We are specifying the condition where this account that started the whole thing, we are setting the account rating to hot. And then we are creating the opportunity and we're adding a fault path. So that means by default, if I updated the account to hot and I came in here to create the opportunity failed, there is no rollback gonna happen. Why? Because we have a fault path. But Salesforce gave us the option to say rollback records. Accordingly, this transaction will be rolled back. All right. So you add a fault path and create opportunity element and the screen element that show error details of the user. However, if the flow throw an error, the flow still save the hot account because error that take full path do not roll back, and we agree just on that. All right. So let's add a rollback record so the flow doesn't save the hot account, because now it's a problem. I already marked it as hot and I didn't create that opportunity. So open it, go in there, select the rollback record, and this is exactly what we did. So click done, save the flow. Now we are saying if this failed, even hot account will not be updated. Let's extend this scenario. What if the create opportunity element, there was another screen element and the create record element? Perfect. The rollback records elements roll back only the change made in the current transaction. And this brings us in here that, is it one transaction across the entire screen flow? The answer is no. We agreed in the implementation one session that screen gonna cut the transaction. So whatever happened before the screen is a transaction, whatever happened between two screens is a transaction, and after it is a transaction. So that means if I'm creating something in here and then I face the screen, commit already happened. So when I continue and I have something in here and it failed and I'm saying rolling back, it will not roll back the entire whole thing, because it will only roll back this transaction, which is until the boundary of that screen. I hope this is clear. So it's roll back that transaction, which is, we know that the screen is cutting this transaction. So accordingly, it will only roll back that transaction. All right. And here, a flow. So we are saying hot account, and then we set close date, and then we are creating an opportunity. All of that assume it succeeded. And then we got another screen. So that means that this is a beginning of a new transaction. And then we are trying to create a task. The create task failed. So we are going in there saying rollback. None of those will be touched. The account already updated and the opportunity already got created. So no problem. But what will be rolled back if I have anything in here saying update contact, update account, and so on. So this transaction, only the one will be rolled back. So far, so good? Lovely. We have a plan now. Now, let's move on from a screen flow, which is giving me the option to roll back, to a record trigger flow. In a record trigger flow, we agreed that we have something else called custom error. In the record trigger flow, you can add a custom error element to show an error message of your choice. This element can also roll back the current transaction and block the change to the trigger, what triggered that flow. So if I have a record trigger flow on rating the change for the account and something happened which blocked it, accordingly, the rollback will not allow this change to happen. Let's look another example at save at risk account flow. All right, so let's open it up. Save at risk account flow. Here we go. Great. So this is a record trigger flow in account happen update. When I update the status at risk, I want to get the leak queue. I need to create a case, and then I need to create a task. What if the create case or create task failed? The rollback gonna happen. That means this change of status at risk will not even be executed. All right. So run when an account is marked at risk. It creates a case that the support team leads to review open cases, and they create a task, the account owner, to reach out to the customer. Both of these are critical from business process perspective, because we want to make sure that the case is there and the task in there as a result of highlighting at risk. Otherwise, we're going to lose that account. So in order to avoid losing an account that got marked at risk, we want to make sure that the case and task and the follow-up is happening. So if the task failed, I want to make sure that this at risk haven't been marked in order to not break the business process that we put together. Otherwise, we might be losing accounts, and we have accounts leakage and we don't know why, because no one is following. So it's very important to roll back the entire transaction to not have this partial execution. Both of these steps are critical to save the account. Let's add a fault path. And we know that when we add a fault path with custom error, because we don't want to have unhandled errors, the rollback will not be executed, but we want to enforce it. So in order to enforce it, we need to add a custom error. Lovely. So add a custom error. Open the save a Cherska account flow. Go to the create case and then add a fault path. So I'm going to come in here saying add a fault path. And within the fault path, I will add a custom error. And this custom error is going to be here. So custom error. Here we go. This is the label. And then the error message will be this. And I have options exactly like what I have in the validation rule, either in a window of the record page or inline error on a field. And then I have all the resources that I can use. I can use the same exact global variable, which is the flow fault message, like what we used in the screen, and so on. All right, now, if this failed, the whole transaction gonna be rolled back. All right, now on the create task, we wanna do the exact same thing. We wanna add an error message, so I add fault path, but rather than keep repeating this, I just wanna reuse it, so I will be connecting. Save the flow, we got the mission accomplished. All right. Now, when a user mark change that trigger this flow and it fails to create a case or a task, the change is blocked and the whole transaction is rolled back. So far, so good. Awesome. So is the custom error within the record trigger flow is only for the fault path? The answer is no. We can use it outside the fault path. So assume that you have an opportunity and you want to close it, but you still have certain tasks that are still open and you want to block. When you are trying to move it to closed, you want to make sure that all tasks are completed. So you want to query the tasks and then you're going to do another logic and then you decide go or no go. Accordingly, if you have that logic which cannot be achieved within a validation rule, you can use a flow with a custom error to block it. Other scenario that the validation rule works for create and update, but it doesn't work for delete. So how about you want to delete something and you want to block that delete from happen for any reason that you might define from business perspective. You can use it as well within the delete. So let's read. The custom error element doesn't have to be used in a fault path. Can be placed on normal flow path and run even when the flow doesn't encounter an error. Remember, the custom error element also roll back the current transaction and block that change that trigger flow. So you can use this capability to control the completion of the flow. For example, let's say user delete an account, but they want to prevent the deletion of account status isn't set to prospect. So I don't want to make anybody to go to clients and delete it, but I can allow it for prospects. So you want to make sure to put this governance in place. Normally, if an admin wants to prevent record change in a Salesforce, they create a validation rule to block that change. However, validation rule only on create and update, not on the delete. So how can we prevent? Record trigger flow can be triggered on deletion. So instead to create a record trigger flow that runs when an account with set not equal to prospect is deleted, in the flow add a custom error and this is gonna do the magic for us. So far so good. So let's put it in practice in here. I can say new flow and the triggering and its record trigger flow, and this can be on the account object, and then a record is deleted, and then I will say all conditions are met, and then status doesn't equal prospect. So this is what they did, and now I can say custom error, you can't do that. All right, accordingly, whenever this doesn't prospect, it will block you from happening. So far so good. We are mastering now the rollback and what that means and how the behavior is different from having a fault path versus non-fault path. All right, so let's put it in a test here. Screen flow encounters an error on an element without a fault path. So if there is no fault path, and that means unhandled exception, and means rollback is already happening. So Salesforce display unhandled fault message and roll back the transaction. That's perfect, right? Screen flow encounters an error on an element with a fault path. So fault path means it's gonna be the error message, it's gonna go to the fault path, and the rollback will not happen. So let's find it out. The flow runs a fault path, yes. Display the error, yes. And roll back the transaction, the answer is no. A flow runs the fault path and the transaction is not rolled back. A rollback can be added, yes. All right, so this is the one. Because rollback, whenever we have a fault path, will not happen by default. Auto launch flow encounters an error on an element without a fault path. What's going to happen? Again, no fault path. That means it's unhandled error. And then if there is no fault path, that means the rollback will happen. All right, so no fault path, unhandled, yes, and the rollback going to happen. So this is the one. Auto launch flow encounters an error on an element with a fault path. Again, a fault path gonna go and the rollback gonna happen. So the flow runs fault path and the transaction will not roll back. All right, so let's find it out. The flow runs the fault path and the transaction is not rolled back. Perfect. Record trigger flow encounters an error on an element without a fault path. So that means this will not be saved and it will happen like unhandled fault. So says force unhandled fault message or relevant validation rule error message and roll back the transaction. That's right. Record trigger flow encounters an error on an element with a fault path that doesn't contain a custom error. So the fault path gonna happen, all right? And it doesn't contain a custom error. That means the rollback will not happen. All right, so the flow run fault path, display the error. No, there is no error message. The flow runs, no error message is shown, and the transaction is not rolled back. The trigger change is not blocked. Yes. Why? Because if there is no custom error, there is no rollback. The triggering change is not blocked. Yep. Record trigger flow encounter an error on an element with a fault path that contains that means that the fault path gonna go and the rollback gonna happen. Accordingly, the record will be blocked. Hopefully, we got it right. Let's see. Woohoo! We did a great job together. Thank you very much. I hope the concept is clear. So, in summary, you don't have a fault path, unhandled error. The transaction gonna be rolled back. You have a fault path. That means it will go there. If you have a rollback or a custom error, that means you're going to enforce the rollback from happening. But if you don't have those things, that means rollback will not happen. All right, I hope it's clear. Let's jump to the challenge. Create a record trigger flow that looks for open tasks when the user sees the opportunity to close one. This is like the example we used. If I have an opportunity about to close, I want to make sure the tasks are cleared out before we allow this from happening. If open tasks are found, use custom error to stop. All right, so create a record trigger flow. We'll go there. New flow, record trigger flow. And this is happening on opportunity when we change it. Opportunity, a record is updated, and then we have certain conditions. Yep. And this is when the stage equals close one, stage equals closed one. And this is only when a record to meet. And this is fast field update. All right. Add get record element. All right, so get record. Get record, we want to find open tasks. So I'll do this. What are the conditions? It's related to the opportunity triggered and closed equal false. Triggering opportunity, and it's the opportunity ID. All right, and then I need to say closed equals false. So get me all the tasks related to that opportunity that triggered, and it's still open. Add a full path in here. So I'll do this, add a full path. What I want to do, I want to add a custom error. So I'll come in here saying custom error. What this custom error is, this is error on get in a window. So let's make sure it's in a window. And then I want to add the message. So flow, and I want to say for message. Perfect. So we now enforce. On the main path, add a decision element after the find open task element. All right, so I'm gonna do that. Decision. The decision is was open task found. Do we have any open tasks? And then we will need to decide if there is open, stop. If not, do not stop. All right, so was open task? Yes, I have yes, and the default is gonna be no. So let's do that. So this is gonna call yes, and it is gonna be called no. Now I have two paths. Yes, if task from find open task entire resource. So task from entire resource is null false. That means I got some records. Great. And the other side is no. What we're gonna do in the yes, we need to block the transaction. That means I used here the custom error in two places. Either this fail, or I have a business process that I need, and then I added the custom error here within the logic to prevent this from happening. Accordingly, this triggering record will not be happening in case we went into this yes branch. This is the error message gonna happen. Perfect. And what else? Save the flow. That's it. So make sure it's the same. Perfect. Save it. And after that, we gonna validate. So far, so good. Any questions? Fantastic. Lovely. We made it. So let's go to the next module. The next unit is talking about deploying. So we done a great job building the flow, optimizing it, following the best practices, making sure that we are not hitting any governance limits. We create our tests. We made sure that we have an error handling, and now we kept saying the best practice is to build it in a sandbox. Now we want to go live, and we're gonna put it in real use. So the time now is to deploy it from a sandbox to production. All right, you have planned your flow, create tests, set everything permissions, but the flow to avoid hitting limits, and you did everything perfect. And you did all of this sandbox. Now that flow is ready, it's time to move it to production. To copy over from sandbox to production, start by adding an outbound change set. What is the change set? It's like a package. It's like a luggage that you are moving from place to another. So you are putting all of these things within luggage and then pack it and then send it out as an outbound change set to receive it as an inbound change set from production. All right, so they are containing different definitions. It's like layouts, apex, low definition. Put it in a change set and then ship it. All right, so this can happen only in a real org that we have a production and sandbox, but we have this great video that we will be using to just to show you if you are in a real scenario, what this gonna happen. All right, so you go in here. It starts from deployment settings. Deployment setting where you can say, I'm already in production. This is the production org, and I can say that I have a sandbox. So if you are in a real environment, you're gonna go in here, sandboxes, you will be able to see all the sandboxes, and then you come in here saying that this production had this sandbox, but the connection is broken. So we need to connect them together, saying this production is allowed to receive an inbound change set from this sandbox. So how can we fix that? We are just editing and then saying allow inbound changes coming from this specific sandbox. Save it. Now we built the link between this sandbox to Salesforce, which is production. We can send an outbound from the sandbox to receive it as an inbound in our production. Once we've done that, let's go to the sandbox. Now we are in a sandbox environment. And within the sandbox, I can go saying it's the time for creating this outbound change set. So we're going to create it. You will find the pick list in there. So we'll say new. And after we do new, we will have a pick list saying adding components. So we need to go in here, change component and add components. You have a lot of metadata or artifacts that you can add it to the change set. But we are focusing today on the flows. So we need to make sure that we have all the flows. And if we create any tests, to add it to that outbound change set. So you go to this pick list, choose flow definition. Flow definition will open for you all the flows in here, and then you're going to select your flow. And then you need to add tests as well. So you will add, and then you will go for flow tests, select all the tests. Now you have one flow definition and the 3 flow tests, exactly like this one. So you got one flow definition, you got some flow tests, and then you are packing it up within a change set, right? So we done that. After that, we are saying an upload. That means we are uploading this outbound change set. After we do that, we will be receiving an email whenever it reaches its destination. And then, congratulations, we received it. So we'll go back to production, looking into inbound change set. So we outbound from Sandbox. We are inbound in the production. Now we can validate it, make sure everything is perfect. If there's test classes we need to run and so on. And finally, we're going to say deploy. Deploy will ask you, how about the test classes? This is a concept in the development. When you have Apex code, you need to have test classes and make sure that you are running those test classes for the code coverage and so on. But this is not enforceable for flows. So we're going to do that. And after we do this, it's already made it. So deploy successfully. That means I will be able to see that flow definition and its tests within production, but you will notice that it's not active and it will be deploying all the versions for that flow. So you want to make sure that you activate the right version that you want to be activating in production, and that's about it. Now you are live. All right, so it's alive, but don't release the balloons and start celebrating before you first debug it, make sure it's working, and make sure while you are doing it, you are now in production. And if you remember, the flow is gonna change. Even if it's in debug mode, it's gonna change the data. So make sure you are marking it as rollback. And we just learned about rollback. That means nothing gonna stick to the database, no commit gonna happen. Accordingly, you need to do this one quick test. Also, we need to check update flow trigger explorer. What we mean by that, you will find in here in the flows, you have flow trigger explorer. Flow trigger explorer showing you all the flows that belong to a certain object and whether it's an update or a create and so on. So if I have multiple, so let me create in here like another flow, just to show you what I mean by that. I will be creating in here no conditions, and I will be saying custom error, and this custom error is anything, and I will just save it. My trigger flow explorer. Save it. We made it. You must specify a value in error test. Great. Here we go. We saved it. Accordingly, I am expecting when I go back in here, now I have 2. What we mean by that we would need to make sure that the order is correct. I might need to have this flow to run before that flow. And if I need to do that, I will say edit order, drag it, and then update it. Accordingly, we will make sure that this one, when we are in this action and the related records execution, I'll be executing this first, and then I'll be executing this second. So for record trigger flow, confirming that your flow in the right spot, making sure the order is perfect. Adjust the flow placement as necessary for more information. Just to go for this one. Debug once with rollback. Debug the flow again to confirm the sandbox and production exactly the same. And you are aligned on whatever is happening. So if your flow schedule auto launch, select run flow in rollback mode. So make sure to check that box. All right, activate the correct version. So if you have multiple versions, so if I open this guy and I said start and save it as a new version, and then I have now 2 versions, V1 and V2. You can go back in here saying this is the one I need to activate, so you can navigate from here. Or if I refresh this guy, you will be seeing that I have 2. You can say flow details and versions and decide which version you need to activate. Also, if you are in here and I refreshed and let me sort it by last and modified, this is the one I just created. You can come in here, say view details and versions, and then you can decide as well. So those are the different options for you to update the version, to decide which version you're going to pick. Make sure users can start the flow. For screen and auto launch flow, confirm the flow is accessible to your user. Log in at least at that user and try that. Let your user know. Tell the flow intended users that the flow exists and give them the instructions. So change management and training is a very critical and important piece of any change. So if this flow is in production and no one knows about it, that means it will not be used. So make sure that you socialize it as well. And finally, once you have everything in place, you debugged it, you made sure that the user is having the same experience, and you debugged using the user, and then you announce it, and you did all the training and the heavy lifting. Now it's the time just to have some reporting around it and make sure it is used. So far, so good. I hope it was helpful. We understood a lot of things. We started to bridge the gap between being an admin versus being a developer. But any questions? Lovely. So let's go for the quiz and wrap it for today. Which change set component do you select to add flow? Flow version, flow interview, flow definition. We just mentioned it's flow definition. Which of these steps should you take after deploying the flow to production? Watch every user run the flow once. I don't think we're going to do that. Debug the flow again. Yes. Make sure it's in a rollback mode. And then we need to activate it as well with the right version. Let's check. Woohoo! We made the flow implementation too. If there's no questions, thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day and see you next week. Bye-bye.